they say you can't ever really go back to your life before a brain injury. There's no going back. There's only this like new path, this new version of what you're going to get. And you have to just be really satisfied with that version or you're just going to be super depressed. I'm guilty of that, but like you got to nip that in the bud as quick as possible. The mania was like, that didn't exist. I didn't have sadness. I had to like teach myself to cry. I used to listen to sad music and candlelight and be like, oh, I can do it. And since he would wake up and I'd be bawling and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm crying. I got it. It's like crazy stuff that I was doing because I was like committed that I was going to like re-grab that spark of life that I had prior to the accident. I wasn't going to let the accident be a bad thing. I wasn't going to let it define the downfall of my life. It was going to be the catalyst that ignited this like bright brilliance of my life.
All right, welcome to the Growth Mixtape Podcast, and I'm your host, Bob Mathers. Now, before we get started, I'd love to ask a quick favor. If you like what we're doing here, please follow the podcast wherever you listen and give us a quick review. There are almost 5 million podcasts out in the world, which means it's really hard for people to find us. The more followers we have, the more reviews we get, the easier that gets. So please share this episode with anyone you think needs to hear it. And if you want even more of this awesomeness we're serving up, join my 100% free Substack at substack.bobmathers.com or get the link in the show notes. Now, today we talk to Sensi Graves and Brandon Scheid, extreme athletes, parents, and now the topic of a new documentary, Windfall. Now, if Sensi sounds familiar, maybe it's because she was one of my first guests almost 2 years ago, and that episode remains to this day one of our most popular ever. If you haven't checked it out, go do that. Now, this episode is a bit of a masterclass in resilience, purpose, and what I call radical gratitude, the ability to find that gratitude in the middle of insanely terrible things happening to you. But honestly, you could hear about people persevering through difficult times anywhere. This conversation is more raw, more honest. Brandon and Sensi's journey is not over. And while their lives on Instagram look exotic as they travel the world chasing their stoke, the reality is a family still recovering, still learning, still adjusting to this new life they didn't plan for. Their strength and resilience is absolutely inspiring. But their honesty makes us all remember that nothing is as easy as it seems. Life is going to throw some terrible shit at you. You might eventually find beauty in it, but that doesn't mean it's easy to find every day. So if you ever tried walking away from another version of yourself, either because you wanted to or because you had no choice, this episode is for you. Or maybe you just need a reminder of what humans are capable of. Yes, Brandon and Sensi do things every day on the water and in the air that only superheroes are supposed to be able to do. But they're not superheroes. And anything they can do, you can do too. Please enjoy Sensi Graves and Brandon Scheid. Brandon and Sensi, welcome to the Growth Mixtape Podcast. Man, this is going to be awesome.
Thank you, Bob. We're super excited to be here.
Yeah, anything we can do to kind of inspire others and get out there, in this age of AI slop, genuine human interactions are a dime a dozen. And so we want to invest in that.
Well, you are speaking my language. And before we jump in, I just wanted to give a bit of context. So Sensi, I don't know if you realize, you were on the podcast almost 2 years ago. You were on episode number 5. You are still one of the top 5 most downloaded podcasts that I've had in almost 60 episodes. And that was 3 months after Brandon's accident and just short number of weeks after you found out you were pregnant. So we didn't talk about Brandon's accident. Like it was kind of the focus of that conversation was more about your origin story and the work that you do. And we can touch on that today, and it was everybody I know, I probably got 50 texts for people. Oh my God, I'm following Sensi on Instagram. I'm following Brandon. They've absolutely loved it. But when I saw the trailer for the documentary Windfall, which I want to talk about, it was like, I messaged you immediately. It was like, yes, this is our chance to continue the conversation. It feels like we left a big chunk out of it. And man, I can't tell you how grateful I am for this. This is going to be, we'd have to go away on a weekend to cover all of the things that I want to talk about. And I feel like you could solve my life if we do if we do this just right.
She's got a lot of tips for success, man. Like she works hard to find out to cultivate these things. Like, the whole reason we're in this, well, we're in life in general, but the accident was like, crazy for me. And had things been reversed and I needed to be the one that was in her position, I don't know that I would have the adequate tool set nor the the diligence and fortitude to like weather the craziness that happened. I was the affected person, so she's got a lot of tools. She could probably fix your life if you let her.
Well, yeah. I mean, I meant both of you combined and the wisdom that you're about to impart on me. I'm so excited about it. Now, there's probably a couple of different groups of listeners, right? There's people that are fans of yours that are coming here and they might know a bit about the accident. There's probably a lot of my audience that doesn't know as much about it. So I want to talk about that, but I want to step maybe just a little back a little bit further to talk about kind of life before the accident. Because I don't know if you've ever done this, but I went to both of your stories on Instagram and I just went backwards, just kept going backwards. And of course, there's amazing, beautiful pictures of you and your son, Flint, and cross country skiing and doing water sports. And then you go back into the recovery and coming home and in the hospital. And then you step over this magical threshold where everything is kind of in a different world. And I wonder how you look back on those weeks and days before the accident, before everything changed.
Yeah, I do agree. It's kind of crazy because there's a heavy delineation, right? There's like, in a crazy way, as my departure of professional wind sports and like this like weird animosity around social media and like what it was doing to the sport and the media and the way that like things are portrayed. Um, Instagram for me became this spot that I could like vent this like shred culture that I had in my existence, whether that was like kiteboarding. At the time I was really passionate about wing foiling, this wonderful sport that was a branch of wind sports. And I was like getting into speed flying a lot, right? That was like 5 years of build up to the crash. Basically, I hate to say it that way, but like I speed flew for about 5 years before that happened. And it became a funnel for that a little bit. So there is a strong delineation. There's like a lot of what most people would say is like risky behavior. In the speed flying community, people would say not that risky behavior because they're tolerant to really high levels of risk because of what they get out of that, offering that much risk on the table. And we can get into that, why it's such a slippery slope. But I'm kind of proud of all the things that I hiked up and all the effort that I invested and how I did all that and how I carried myself through all that. So it carries a lot of connotation for me in several different ways, emotionally. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting moment, obviously.
Well, yeah. And of course, and Sensi, you had found out you were pregnant just around the time of the accident too. So it's probably, I don't know, it's hard to separate the accident from all those complicated, emotions of being pregnant and then because you think about your life in terms of these forks in the road, right? Where there's like things before the accident, things after the accident, things before being a mom, things being like after a mom. And now in this case, it's all just mashed up together.
Yeah, and it is interesting when you do go back, as you did. Brandon's social media and his experience at the time was a lot about the shred, as he said, and showing people how much he could do and pushing the limits of his sports, which he's really excited about. And there's a lot of separation between us as a family and him as a solo person. I think that's what you see a lot in his particular media. Is before the accident, it was very focused on what I'm doing and what I can do and pushing the limits of the human. And post accident, obviously there's more family with Flint, a new addition, but more in general, us growing as humans together. And I would probably say that that was similar for me prior to the accident. Not to say we were separate, but we're pushing our own agendas forward. And we didn't have to come together as much because we're both autonomous humans that were successful in our own ways and able to support one another fully. And then you have something such as the accident in which it required a big stepping up on my part and a lot of whoa, okay, we are in this together. Now things just got really heavy, despite being together for over 15 years and going through ups and downs of life that naturally occur. This one particular piece really was a exclamation point on, okay, now this is something he really needs support. We're a family. And it's kind of like, okay, buck up the bootstraps. We got to do this together.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things that I want to come back to on what things both of you said, but I imagine listeners might be wondering, okay, what's this crash we're talking about? So can you walk us through sort of what happened?
I'll start. And it is, of course, very emotional. Anytime you get a phone call that is alarming, there's a lot of constriction that happens in the body. And not to go too deep in the psychology of things, but I don't know if you've read The Body Keeps the Score, Bob, but your body remembers trauma. And even just talking about, I feel myself getting that constriction and the shortness of breath and the trauma. So bear with me if it gets emotional here. I was in Canada. So it was right after Thanksgiving. We were together as a family on Thanksgiving. I flew out the next day, Friday, to Canada for a work trip. Arrived is the first day on location. I was there for a speaking event and was thankfully with a group of really supportive women, and was actually getting my headshots taken. And so I was in a small room with the photographer and one other person and sitting on a chair and posing for the camera. And I had my phone to the side. I walked off the stool to my phone, picked it up, and I had like 6 or 7 missed calls from my friend Ewan. And Ewan, I mean, I don't know how often he calls me, very rarely. And so I immediately got that constriction in my stomach and the feeling, I was like, I knew something was wrong. I knew something was really wrong. And so I called him right back, and he said, Brandon's been in an accident. And I just collapsed to the floor, and just stress and fight or flight took over, and just couldn't even really function because he had said that we're not sure if he's going to make it. And of course, at that point, I knew it was a speed flying accident. He walked through a little bit of the high level details of what happened, but I immediately kind of handed off the phone to the other woman that was in the room because I was just too overwhelmed with emotion and sadness and trauma response. So over the next 6 or so hours, I kept getting information about what had happened. They had loaded Brandon onto a life flight and taken him to the hospital in Portland. I kept getting snippets of information, sitting with these women. There was one that was a psychologist or someone that specialized in athlete psychology, and so she was sitting with me the entire time. We rebooked my flight home. I immediately left for the airport, got home, didn't go home, got into Portland, went straight to the hospital and found Brandon in a coma in the ICU.
Did you know you were pregnant yet?
No.
Okay.
That comes a couple weeks later, but there is something interesting there, which is I called one of my best friends on the way to the airport. You know, I'm just dealing with trauma response in the body and just completely overwhelmed. And the first thing that my best friend said to me was, "You're not pregnant, are you?" And I was like, "No, 100% not. There's no way." And that just kind of brushed over. But 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant.
Why would she ask you that?
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know. But Flint was very much meant to be here with us now, and there'll be a little more.
No kidding.
I mean, thankfully, I didn't know I was pregnant at that time because I don't think I could have handled it, Bob. I mean, I barely, barely could handle the knowledge of the accident.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. So there's a couple of things I definitely want to come back to about that. But yeah, speed flying. So by the way, Brandon, I had never heard of speed flying or speed kiting. And I saw some of you, I went back and watched it on Instagram. I'm like, holy shit. Like, I can't, humans do this? Like, you realize that you're like an X-Men, like both of you. Like, you're like superheroes. You're flying through the air, jumping in the air. Yeah, it's insane.
it's even thinking about it now, knowing that I won't dabble in this sport because of the way that just my personality, I shouldn't be in high risk sports in general. It's so freaking sweet. You hike up a big hill. So it's a subset of paragliding. Men have been obsessed with the sky ever since they probably could look at birds or whatever, right? You have the invention of the plane. You kind of have like powered flight. You have all that stuff. Parachutes are needed. At some point, people start taking like hang gliders. I think was the first kind of like sky sport shred that's in air sports. Obviously glider planes and stuff like that, but human powered. I would say hang gliders. You think of the rigid things in the 70s that fold in half and people fall out of the sky, all this crazy stuff. That progresses into soft canopies, right? You don't want to like you don't want to spend an hour building out your hang glider on landing or whatever. So then became these like fabric wings. They look like a parachute, kind of. The biggest difference between a parachute and a paraglider is a parachute is a drag device. It's designed to slow you down, where a paraglider is actually a wing. So given the proper conditions, which is basically forward speed, just like a plane, if you go fast enough on a plane, forward speed, you get lift out of the wing. Same thing with the paraglider. If you can go forward fast enough, it'll lift you. Well, gravity provides the initial force of the forward, so you just run it off a hill, and gravity pulling you down moves you forward, and then you fly. You can tap into thermals like birds. You can find like rising columns of air and fly for hours and hundreds of miles in cross-country paragliding. There's acrobatic paragliding, which is like you go up and do like crazy tricks with your paraglider, kind of like spin them and they flip over them now. They do crazy stuff in that. That also really dangerous. And then recently there's been a subsport of paragliding called speed flying, which is you're basically using just the gravitational force. You're not looking for lift at all. You're actually looking to go down the hill, much like a mountain biker or a skier. As a kiteboarder, I've been flying basically wings for 25 years. Like the paraglider was not something hard for me to learn how to fly. What the hard thing was to learn when to fly, when to put it in the backpack, when to check the brakes. Like I remember when I learned, I went to a pretty loose speed flying school. The kid that was like sweeping up there, he had just broken his back and all that, like he was in pieces. And like I remember saying the word whoa on a landing because I was coming in really what seemed really fast. They were like, okay, you don't get to touch the speed wing anymore. You only get to fly the paraglider. So they were doing their best. This place is called Saboba. It's in Southern California, to help all the skydivers who are like, whoa, this sport looks freaking sweet. And they're just piling themselves in because they have canopy experience, but they don't understand flight, mountain, weather. If the light says green as a skydiver, you jump out of the plane. There's no green light when you hike to the top of a 5,000 foot mountain and you go like, oh, I'd really like to not hike down. It's up to your own person whether that you can make that call. And some people are a little loose with that. And the canopies they're learning how to make them. So this school in particular will teach you how to speed fly, which some would say is irresponsible, but they're trying to like mitigate basically people from doing it on their own and not having the proper skills. But yeah, so it's a scary, gnarly, super addictive, super amazing sport that gives you a lot. You spend time in the mountains, you get up early, camaraderie with your friends. If you know anything about flow state, the brain state you are into, it tampers down your prefrontal cortex. It makes you feel at one with nature. It disassociates yourself. You have deep, sometimes epiphanies in these moments. It's this amazing brain state that you can get into. And that's kind of where action sports lives. It's why the people do the wingsuiting. It's why the big wave surfers do the big waves. It is about the sport feat itself. But there's something else going on in your brain. And that state is so addictive. It's no different than hard drugs. Like you're willing to put everything. I'm willing to risk my life for a 3-minute flight down this big hill for kicks, or it's a weird one. So got addicted to that. And I don't remember the incident. I can only talk to you about it because it was witnessed by somebody who actually filmed it. So that's that's part of the documentary. We have all the footage. He saved my life. He's a good friend of mine. His name is Isaac. He's a professional kayaker and pilot and just like really awesome human. And he was there. He administered the things that were needed to keep me in stable condition. and I was life flighted, as Sensi said, to the Portland hospital. Thank God for Isaac has the capacity to deal with trauma like that. Like, I don't have any memory of this incident. I don't remember Thanksgiving. I have like a big black hole until I wake up in the hospital in a coma. The hospital is a weird one for me still. I don't know what memories are mine and what are like fabrications of mine. I was broken, but I wasn't like that deterred because I had a crazy brain injury to the right side of my brain and my temporal and frontal lobes. And that basically made me not be able to access that much emotion, kind of just logic. And so I logicked my way out of all of the problems. And I was like brain injuries are crazy. We can go down that wormhole. But yeah, I was in a bad speed flying accident, basically.
So you hit the ground at what, 60 miles an hour?
So hard. I was going like, I would say 40 to 50 miles an hour. And then I narrowly avoided I was going to hit the ground, but then I made some evasive piloting maneuvers, which put me not hitting the ground, but then falling off like 100-foot cliff. So I guess as fast as you would fall off a 100-foot cliff with kind of like a parachute, it was kind of a parachute. It was ripped in half because it hit the cliff and then it got destroyed. So like, yeah, like pretty hard, I think. Apparently I bounced a few times. So that broke my fall a little bit. Come on. I know I've been falling my whole life. I stomped the fall. I mean, obviously I crushed it.
There must have been some muscle memory in there you don't remember it, and you're watching your body do these things that probably saved your life, but you don't know, you didn't consciously do it, or you don't remember doing it.
Yeah. Lots of crashing. I had a lot of time crashing in my life, and I learned how to deal with all that, I guess.
I want to come back to the documentary, but just for now, like, what was it like watching that footage?
I haven't seen it yet.
Really?
No. And, going back into the trauma in the body, I'm nervous about watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're 2 years out from the accident, and obviously we've gone through a ton of healing, an immense amount of healing. But I think watching that is just going to be so overwhelming that I'm really hesitant to dive into it. Actually, I think we're getting a cut of the documentary next week. And so the time is coming up for us to view it, but I'm pretty nervous about it.
Yeah. I'd like to talk just a little bit about the brain injuries. And I wonder, Sensi, maybe if you could talk a little bit about that first, because it seems like, it's an invisible injury. So when something like this happens, you have this amazing community rush to your side and you've got everybody around you. And then Brandon recovers pretty quickly. And it, to like somebody walking down the street, he would say, oh yeah, guy was banged up, but 3 months later, he's out there doing cool shit again. And he looks normal. And so people start treating you normal, and yet nothing is normal, I'm guessing.
No, it was extremely tough, the brain injury. Initially he broke his back. He had abrasions all on the right side of his body. He had a broken eye socket and face, broken pelvis. What else did you break? I'm trying to think of all his physical injuries. They were initially going to have to remove his eye, but luckily they saved his eye. So a lot of stuff physically, and we of course didn't know the brain part of it. Besides that, there was bleeding in the brain, which thankfully they were able to stop very soon because he had an injury to the back of his brain, which is the pons, which has actually, what is it, a 70% mortality rate?
It's really high, yeah. The pontonine is in your brainstem, and if your brainstem stops working, you stop being able to breathe, respirate, all that stuff. So they keep you alive on a machine, but generally when those situations happen, they talk to the family, and a quality of life assessment is usually made, and usually that ends with the termination of the person, because without a brainstem, you're kind of basically worthless.
So thankfully, that bleeding stopped relatively quickly, and they were able to stabilize that. But we didn't know the extent or that he had a brain injury until he woke up. And so he was in a medically induced coma for a couple days. And they were going to operate on him, and thankfully all this stuff lined up where they didn't end up having to operate on him. And so he actually didn't have any surgeries besides all the stitches that he had in his body. But when he woke up, he was on a lot of drugs. And so that was still very fuzzy for him, and we didn't know the extent of anything until a few days after that. So I would probably say 10 days after the accident, when I was like, oh, this isn't him.
When I was yelling at the
Mm.
doctors to take me off the pain medications.
How his brain injury manifested, which because it was occurred on the right side of his brain, was mania. And
Mm.
so I don't know if you have any experience with mania, but that meant that he couldn't stop talking, more so than now. He was overly energetic. He had no compassion. It was all very external, very critical, very externally critical. And that meant that a lot of it fell on me. And when you talk about community initially, I mean, even, throughout the past 2 years, we've had a ton of community support. But after that huge surge in the beginning of community support, getting back home and settled in and kind of getting back on our feet a little bit, I was the primary caregiver, and therefore the bulk of Brandon's criticism and aggression landed on me. And it was a very challenging time, obviously, for me being newly pregnant, but also because it was a balance of having compassion for this person that he was obviously had a brain injury, and even though you can't see it, I could tell immensely how much he's experiencing, but then having boundaries around, Jesus, I cannot be spoken to like that. Like, there's a point in which it was extremely challenging because he's so manic, so much energy, so much talking, and I'm just like, gee, I just need a break. Like,
Yeah.
you can't keep talking to me like that. So yeah, it initially manifested as mania, and then 6 months later, actually depression. And so we're still not through the woods, but as you just mentioned, the interesting thing with brain injuries is that you can't tell. And so we've had to employ a lot of grace and compassion throughout this entire process, and asking other people for that same thing.
And what's that like for you, Brandon, when you look back? Like, you can remember behaving that way, but I imagine it's also kind of hard to hear.
Yeah, I think that's the nerve. I'm not too worried about watching my carcass bounce down the hill. I'm more worried about the fallout because we started the filming process like a couple weeks after I got home from the hospital. And so the I don't know, I was I don't hate to call myself a crazy person because that's a negative connotation. I had a brain injury. I was an injured brain person, but I exhibited like a freaking crazy person. So like they pointed a camera at me and said, "Talk as much as you want." And Mania Brandon is like, "Yes, this is what I always wanted." And so I'm a bit. We'll see what comes out of all of that. So that's more where I'm nervous. For me, the sort of to hear the disruption, and know that it's not a. I'm not proud of the way that manifested itself. I'm not happy that it's going to be portrayed that I'm probably a huge dick, following my brain injury, because I was, and that's fair. Um, it's interesting to be like, oh, is that what I'm really like when my inhibitions are turned off? Like it kind
Mm.
of makes you feel a little introspective and a bit, like you got to really look at the darkness in there, or I hate to say darkness, but the dark side of that. Um, but it was so fun for me. I was loving it. Mania is insane. It's like doing all the best drugs in the world all day, every day. And you don't care how you affect other people. And you're just like on this freaking hoo-ah. It was like really awesome for me. It was, look, I don't know if it's how the universe works out or how brain injuries work out, but like it was so helpful in my recovery. It was like, I'm going to do all the workouts. I'm going to do all the self growth.
Mm.
I'm going to do all the stuff. Like I was so driven, like to achieve. They say you can't ever really go back to your life before a brain injury. There's no going back. There's only this like new path, this new version of what you're going to get, and you have to just be really satisfied with that version, or you're just going to be super depressed. I'm guilty of that, but like you got to nip that in the bud as quick as possible. The mania was like that didn't exist. I didn't have sadness. I had to like teach myself to cry. I used to listen to sad music and candlelight and be like, oh, I can do it. And Sensi would wake up and I'd be bawling, and and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm crying. I got it." It's like crazy stuff that I was doing because I was like committed that I was gonna like re-grab that spark of life that I had prior to the accident. I wasn't gonna let the accident be a bad thing. I wasn't gonna let it define the downfall of my life. It was gonna be the catalyst that ignited this like bright brilliance of my life. So hopefully some of that comes out of it too, where it's inspirational and not just like the rantings of a crazy person.
Hey, it's Bob, and I'm taking the Growth Mixtape on the road in a series of live podcast episodes. Imagine a podcast tailored specifically for your company, recorded in front of a live audience that would be released as its own episode. These are thoughtful, emotional conversations that help teams who have lost their spark rediscover their curiosity and creativity so they can love work again. Sure, you could do a typical keynote or panel discussion, or you could give your team something they'll never forget. Book me at your next event at bobmathers.ca. Now back to the show. Well, the brain is amazing, isn't it? It's like it doesn't do anything for no reason. Like there's a reason behind mania, and if the brain is like, well, you shouldn't have survived this, but if there's any chance of you getting through this, you're going to have to work out like crazy. Like there's got to be a rationale behind all of this, even if it's a nightmare for the people around you. It's like, no, sorry, you can't cry right now. You've got to work out 8 hours a day and keep talking. There must be a reason why it's designed that way.
Yeah, I feel like if you gave me a time machine and said, "Brandon, go back in time and tell yourself not to speed fly that day," I would never do that. I think it's been a super powerful thing that happened to me. It needed to happen to me, like to get me out of the weird drug addiction to speed flying that I had. It gave us our son. Like there's so many things that came out of this. So like I would never not have it happen. Is critical to my life. Even now I'm still dealing with so much fallout, but like I'd rather deal with the fallout and like learn and grow and like have something come of this rather than just kind of like give up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And Sensi, do you look back on it with the same sort of gratitude that Brandon does? Because like you said, a lot of it landed on you. And, you know, from our first conversation, obviously the work that you do around empowering people and building confidence and setting boundaries, it's like, God, it's like you were perfectly engineered to deal with this if anyone could.
Thank you. It's a tough one because I agree that we've had so much growth out of it. And as we spoke about in the beginning of this conversation, before the accident and after the accident, it was more singular versus us as a family. And so it's simply that shift where it's like, we're in this together, we can do this together, is extremely powerful. And as I had mentioned on our first time together, Bob, it's that the more you experience hardship, the more that you have a capacity for love. I really do believe in that. And so everything that you experience that's difficult and hard increases your capacity as a human for more hardship, more challenge, more growth. And the human brain is actually something called anti-fragile, which means that we need hard experiences in order to continue to expand. And the brain thrives on overcoming challenges. If you don't have something in front of you that allows you to grow, we make up challenges, we make up problems. And that's often how we self-sabotage, because we're looking for things to overcome. And so it's good for us to have hardship. And I don't want to say that I'm...
Come on, say it. You're happy, right? Come on, say it.
I don't want to say I'm happy that happened, but I'm grateful in the tools that I have and had and have to continue to be resilient.
Well, I remember you in our first conversation, and I wrote it down, you cited a quote from the prophet: "The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain." You got emotional when you were talking about that the first time. And I love that. I've never forgotten that. But I also wonder, like, how do you hang on to that in the moment? Like when this is going on, you must be like, for fuck's sakes, like enough already. Like, haven't I, yeah, okay. Like it's okay to look back it's easier to look back in retrospect and say that, but in the moment, how do you find some sort of gratitude or trust that this is happening for a good reason?
That's an extremely great
So
question.
I got an answer.
Oh, okay. Brand has an answer. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
When you're in those hard things where it's like, holy moly, how am I going to deal with this? It's kind of the same as if you were staring at the bottom of Mount Everest and you were like, I'm going to go to the top, but holy moly, like how there's no way I can deal with this. Like the avalanches, the crevasses, I got to base camp. I got to like deal with the giant refuse piles. I got to do that one. Like Everest is like a daunting thing. But the easiest way to kind of get rid of that is just to look at what you can do right now and or just in one day. What's the one thing that you can do that gets you one step closer to Everest? Because if you just put your head down and don't focus on the huge overwhelming problem, yeah, it's not going anywhere. Everest is still looming over you. But if you just kind of don't look at it in that same light, you look how beautiful it is, you look how blue the glaciers are, take a few steps, sit down, have a sandwich. You're gonna get to the top. Like everyone is so hung up on I need now, 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 now. I want my solution now. I don't want to do the work. I want it now. I want my Amazon Prime now. Um, and so you get attached to these results happening really fast, and you forget that like one step a day like gets you really far in a year. Like the quote, the Egyptians built the pyramids, how they do it, one rock at a time. It's like, yeah, okay, literally, you just show up and put a rock in, and then someone else shows up and puts a rock in, and you get to amazing things with small digestible things that let you not look at the large problem. And during that time when you're taking those small steps, you like I said, you look around and you say, wow, it's so beautiful here. I'm so grateful that I took a break to stay here. Or you have a moment where you run into another person. You're like, how was the journey up there? And it's like, oh, it's crazy. You don't want to go up there today. And you're like, great, I'm going to hang out right down here. And so you just find a way to like get some distance between you and the big picture by looking down and focusing in, like narrowing in. And that really is a helpful thing when you're dealing with a lot of crazy adversity, in my opinion.
I'll add to that because Brandon said something that I also really believe to be true, which is the presence piece. The more we are present in our bodies and can create safety in our bodies with right where we're at, the less everything feels overwhelming and too big to handle. And so during that time, one of the things that I really focused on, and I maybe had said this in our first conversation together, but my best friend at the time had said to me, Sensi, your only job, because I was running my swimwear business at that time and like coming back from the hospital and trying to be like, oh, what do we do? And then find out I was pregnant. It was just like, oh my gosh. But she's like, your only job is to take care of you and this baby and your husband during this time. That's your only job. And so coming back into how do I just take care of me, myself, and my husband? And in that order, me, myself, my baby, my husband, was being in the present moment. And thankfully, I've done a lot of work on knowing what I need as a human, introspection and revelations around what supports me. And so carving time for that self-care, for lack of a better word. But going back to basics, did I drink water today? Can I get outside for a walk? What can I focus on in just the present moment here and now that I can both be grateful for, whether that's looking up at the glacier and saying, oh my gosh, how blue and beautiful it is, or trying to regulate my nervous system to say, I'm okay. And right now, I'm okay. Because a lot of times when we stop, when we look, and just this moment, we are okay.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, one of the silver linings, if you want to call it that, when we have tragedy strike like this, is that life gets really simple really fast. And all of that other shit that you worried about, and maybe this would happen if you went back through that Instagram story and you're like, yeah, I wonder what that guy or that, I wonder what she was worried about that day. It's like, right? Self, husband, baby. That's it. Nothing else. And yet I often think about this idea of like radical gratitude too, because it's easy to be grateful for, hey, I'm healthy and my baby's healthy and my husband is recovering or my wife is amazing. but it's like finding gratitude in those really impossible things that you would never wish on anybody. It seems like that is a big thing as well. Which kind of goes to the core of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I will say, Bob, you're like, oh, didn't you feel like at a certain point, like this is enough? Like, why am I getting served up with another hardship? Because I have had a lot of trauma happen in my life. My mom died when I was 16 years old. My dad's been incarcerated twice in federal prison. My younger brother was shot. I've had a lot of trauma, but we all have. And in that initial reaction after Brandon's accident, besides the overwhelming grief and sadness that had come up and the not knowing what's going to happen, there was a bit of why. Why is this happening to me? What's the lesson here? Why do I need another hardship? I feel like I've gone through my fair share of traumas and hardship. I don't understand why I'm getting served up another one. And I was stuck in that for a little bit.
Is that your violin that you're playing? The world's tiniest violin.
I was stuck in, why did this happen to me? And thankfully, I worked through that pretty quickly, but I think that's a key to it as well, is allowing yourself to be in the grief and to be in the sadness of it and letting yourself feel that way. That's okay. That's okay, because we can't always move into gratitude extraordinarily quickly, but it is focusing on those small steps of self-care. The only things that matter are the here and now, and what can I focus on? Making the world really small, feeding ourselves. The community came through huge in that aspect, dropping off meals to us. And then slowly, this is what I can continue to focus on, which is we have a roof over our heads. We're making progress. The baby's kicking. All of these things that is a choice. I will say is a choice. You get to choose what you focus on. What you focus on expands. And so training myself to look for the things that are beautiful and joyful in life, even if it is hard, it's okay.
Well, then I wanted to ask you about, maybe I'll ask you this first, Sensi, and then Brandon, I'd love to get your take on this idea of, because when the first conversation, Sensi, we talked about your why and helping people, helping empower people and find and express their amazing humanness. You did a better job of it than I just did. But I wonder if that's changed, whether it's changed from being a mom or whether it's changed from the injury, how you think about that. Because, and I'll tell you why I ask, because I think a lot of people get crippled with this purpose anxiety, like, oh my God, I don't know what my purpose is. And I think it's okay for it to change. And if it's, you don't have to know your life's purpose, certainly when you're 20 or 25 or 30, or if in my case, 55, it's okay. Just find something that's meaningful and move in that direction, and it might change.
Yeah, I love that you point that out, because I think we get stuck in that a lot as humans, that we're like, find your passion, follow your passion. And I remember for a really long time, I was like, I don't know where my passion is. What do you mean? Like, I wrote in my journal, I just want to be passionate. Like, that was something that I wanted to focus on. I was like, I want to be passionate about my work. That was a value of mine. And I felt almost crippled with inaction because I was like, I don't know where the heck my passion is. And so I agree that that's not something that we should be teaching people at all, because I think you could actually go through life and not find anything that is, quote, your passion. But what I think is more important is that you just allow yourself to try things. And I think that's where we get stuck a lot in. I'm going to continue with this job because it's what I know. It's safe. I've done it for 20 years. I'm going to keep doing that, even though I don't feel passionate about it, or even though I don't love it. And that's where we need to release and say, it's okay to not know, and give yourself permission to try something. And actually, in the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, she tells a story about uncovering what she wanted to do next after she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, the mega hit, where she had best-selling book and movies. Like, you can't really top that. She was crippled with, what do I do next? How can I find my next thing I'm passionate about? How do you follow up a mega bestseller? And she tells the story about starting to garden, and something that she was just a tiny bit interested in. And so she just started gardening in her yard. And then she discovered a flower that she was excited about. And then she started looking into the history of that flower, and she learned about how the flower came over on a boat and was imported from England way back in the day. And she uncovered this whole story around this flower. And long story short, that became the epicenter of her next book. And she talks about pulling on the thread of possibility, where we allow ourselves to follow the inkling of anything that we're interested in or excited about to uncover what's next for us. And I think that's how I've been able to finally do the work that I am passionate about, which is I've tried a ton of stuff and I've done a lot of introspection and personal development work around revealing what lights me up. And I'm thankful to align with what the Japanese called your ikigai, which is the juxtaposition, the intersection of what you love to do, what you can get paid for, what the world needs, and what you're good at intersect. And so, all that to say, I think you just need to allow yourself to try things.
Yeah. Well, I love that so much, Sensi. I love that big magic book. I just read it like in the last couple of months. And so, Brandon, I'm wondering from your perspective, like it, and it reminds me of this idea of curiosity. Like it does feel like this idea of curiosity and giving us the freedom, like you said, Sensi, to try new things. I wonder how that showed up for you, Brandon, because all of these things that you used to love doing and chasing, being addicted to flow. What do you do when you can't throw yourself off mountains anymore? How do you chase that?
Oh man, complicated one. Because as that does something for my brain that I crave, right? So you need to find and engineer new and exciting ways for you to get to that same location, I guess, in your brain chemistry. I read a couple books. The one that really stood out to me was called The Rise of Superman. It's in particular about why action sports are pushing the progress of human possibilities. Like you said, X-Men, you're like flying down this mountain. So there's something about risk that amplifies that that state that gets you to where you can believe that you can do impossible things. And so just like any good old drug addict, I was like craving that like crazy. So after reading the book, I was inspired that his whole thing is like, hey, that's great that action sports risk their lives, but like, what can you as a normal person learn from this? How can you apply this? And he talked a lot about how people in business are really trying to get their engineers and their workers to access this brain state because this is where the magic happens, the aha moments. And so there's benefits to engineering it in other ways. And historically, we didn't have to like jump out of a plane to get there. There was ways that we got there. It was through communication. So deep conversation. You ever be in a conversation with someone that's so engrossing that you're like, where did the 4 hours go? Like, wait, what? You lose track of time. You like that's flow state. That gets you there. Music, man, music for sure can get you there. You're lost in a riff, especially if you're playing with other people. That communication, the symbiosis that happens in music. So for me, immediately, I was drawn to the piano. I love playing the piano. I had to have a hobby kind of before the accident. I play dabble here and there. We have one in our house. Now I try to play the piano almost every day. It's so wonderful for your brain and your dexterity and like all the things you need. You can do it quietly. You can put on headphones. You don't bother anybody. The one that was like the easy one for me too was I got into FPV drones. So I don't know if you're familiar with what this is. It's like it's a drone, which is like a flying helicopter. They go really fast, or they can, depending on what you buy. And then they wirelessly transmission to a headset. So you put on like what looks like a VR goggle headset, and you instantly become a bird because you then are wherever that drone is. And guess what? If you crash the drone, it just costs money. It doesn't cost your body physically. It still sucks when you crash your drone. They're like expensive, so there's still risk. So fun. And for me, I had a lot of visuospatial disruption. Sensi commented about how they almost lost my eye. I had a lot of impact to my vision and the optical center related to that. I had a lot of issues with my visuospatial balance. I had insane amounts of nausea to the point of like vomiting quite regularly. So I needed, with my goal to be, I'm going to be on a hydrofoil, which is a lot of visuospatial information, balance. My balance was immediately compromised. Like in the hospital, they were like, balance. And I laughed at them because I had mania. I was like, I'll show you how to balance. I could balance with my eyes open, kind of, with a broken back and all that stuff. They would really wouldn't want to let me do it, but I'd do it anyways. And then they'd be like, close your eyes. And I close my eyes, I fall over instantly. Or put your feet in a straight line and balance, fall over instantly. I'm like, uh-oh, time to get to work. So how do we get ourselves through that in a safe way that also gets flow state? I got on a simulator, so I was able to sit. I would sit on a medicine ball, and I'd be like steering the drone. I'd be like, oh, and I'd like have to like kind of like stabilize myself in my spine and all that stuff. We went to California. Remember, I was obsessed. I made your cousin drive me around to spots just to fly my
I
drone.
forgot about the drone.
It was like,
well, this is one thing.
Spent tons of money on drones.
On a side, Bob, Brandon, and speaking of the curiosity, he was so into different things after the brain injury.
Bone arrow, archery.
He was going to the archery.
I bought a $500 compound bow.
He was buying all this stuff. I'm like, oh my goodness, great.
I had to give her my control of my money because I was like, I don't believe in money. I just buy anything. The internet is so easy. You just click a button and it shows up. You're like, yeah, I'm buying that. I'm buying that. I'm buying that.
He bought so many drones. I was like, but I was like, okay, this is good. And it gives him something to do because he had so much energy and curiosity and just like wanting to do stuff. I was like, we have to do something.
Yeah. So,
is there anything else you got? Bow and arrow and the drones.
The piano. I was into breath work. I was like holding breath holdings.
You walked down the street punching this ball.
Oh, I had a head ball that you punch. It's like a workout thing, but it really helped with like the perception in and out of space and my balance. So I'd walk to my hyperbaric chamber, punching my ball. I'd go in my hyperbaric chamber. I'd hold my breath for 5 minutes, and then I'd go home and I'd go in a cold plunge for like 10 minutes. I could do anything I put my mind to. And that's why kiteboarding is so rad, because I was able to go from like, you ride with a twin tip, you ride with a surfboard, you ride with a foil, you jump really high in the air. It never gets stale. It's like always can bring something each time. And the long goal site, which didn't take that long, was like, I'm getting back on the hydrofoil, because that you can't really jump super high. You're not going super fast. I see like 70-year-old people do it every day here in the gorge. So I know it's approachable. It's a soundbite, but like hydrofoiling basically like saved my life, because like if I didn't have the access to that and I didn't have that as a motivator to get me, I don't know if I'd still be a dizzy goo crying my eyes out because of like how much I had to put in to like get that goal. Helped me recover like massively, considering the what normally happens with brain injuries, basically. Yeah.
Well, and that's a couple of things about that, and it's actually a good segue into the documentary. I didn't realize that you hadn't seen it. Who did you make the documentary for, and what do you hope people take away from it?
Yeah, so I think the goal is broad. I would love that almost anyone could watch it. I'm not sure. It's sport, it's injury, it's growth. It's kind of a little niche, but the goal is to take anybody who's given a life-changing circumstance. In our case, it was an accident, so a lot of trauma. For some people, it's having a baby. That's a pretty big life change. And a lot of people are going to do that. So we did that one. At the same time, it's a story about a relationship, working on your relationship through adversity. And so I'm hoping that there's something a lot of people can glean from it. I'd hate to say, if you're broken and put out, watch this and you're going to be like stoked. I don't want to say it's for broken people, but the goal would be just to inspire people, because this is going to maybe sound crazy, but when I had mania, I felt that like this thing was coming through me. I felt like I needed to inspire people, that I needed to take advantage of this, that I've journal after journal after post of all this thing that I want to do, all these inspirations. Like, we need to bottle this up and like get this. And it made me really think, like, those historical figures that you think of that inspired generations of people, like, who's to say they didn't get hit in the head with a rock or fall down or have some malnutrition? You can get in trauma in a lot of different ways. And so I was convinced that like this thing was like coming out, and I wanted to like encapsulate that in the best way possible. And at the time, I just wanted to talk, and I know movies, and I kind of worked in action sports. I was like, man, I feel like there's something here. So the target would be to inspire other people that through growth, through trauma, and through change, that you can lead a wonderful existence, and how to take those lessons that I learned the hard way and hopefully apply them to your life without having to learn them the absolute hard way. Like a gentle nudge rather than what I got, which is like a big bat to the head or something, basically.
Right.
Like, you think of a lobster or a crustacean. Okay. This is a little abstract, off topic, but it's a good analogy. They have to molt, right? And molting is the process of breaking their shell and like going into a new exoskeleton. Bugs do this too. You think of like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, or beetles growing, but crab is the easiest one. Just before they molt, they like, you think of their soft pink gooey body on the inside of that shell. It's expanding. It's like uncomfortable. It's squished. It's like, this sucks. Like, it's uncomfortable. And they go and they hide and they do a little self-growth. They do a little breath work, whatever they do. We don't know what they do, under a rock or whatever. And they split open the exoskeleton, which is a whole process. They have to break and molt, and out comes this gooey, soft arthropod. And you have to it has to hide for a little bit until it becomes strong. But what's great about that is every time they molt, they get bigger. There's a lot of uncomfortable time where you're like squeezed in your little shell, but you have to be comfortable with being squeezed to expand. And that's a really great nature analogy about growth.
I love that. And those crabs too, when they move into a new shell, that new shell doesn't really fit at first, right? And so they have to grow into that new version of themselves too. Yeah, man, crustacean talk. I love that. What about you, Sensi? Like, what is the documentary about for you?
It's about resilience and overcoming adversity. We were in the hospital when the producer reached out to us, and at first I was like, what? Someone wants to do a documentary? Like, I don't even know. What are you talking about? The guy is actually a kite porter, so a friend of a friend connected us, and my whole goal with it, with doing it and putting our story out there, because it is vulnerable, as I mentioned, we haven't even seen it yet, and we're nervous about how vulnerable it is. But the whole intention is to inspire others to believe in themselves through hardship and adversity. And we're all going to experience trauma. There's no one's trauma is greater than any others, and it's about human connection and creating empathy. Like, we're all in this together, and that was one of the biggest things through this, is how much we can grow with the power of community and connection. And I think one other subnote of that is the grace that we can extend to other humans, because you never know what someone's going through. And as we spoke to with the invisible injury piece, everyone is going through their own form of trauma and hardship. And the more grace that we can extend to other humans, the more love and compassion we'll have on this planet.
I mean, think how many people in the modern world are struggling with mental health issues, whether that's anxiety, depression, there's like paranoia. I mean, it goes up the wazoo. And I can say for a fact, like, I have a mental health issue because of the brain injury. I'm still dealing with my depression, like, on a daily basis. And that's okay. And it's totally okay to have that. And the more vulnerable, I found, what's really weird, alpha male over here, strong pro kiteboarder guy, not the person you would think would be super vulnerable and open and tell you how much I appreciate you and like really be soft. And what I learned from the brain injuries, I was really into that kind of connection, because you're looking for all that kind of that stuff. It's amazing when you're vulnerable and open, how that opens the door for people to be vulnerable and open to you. And doesn't mean you're like, you cry, they're going to cry, but maybe that means you cry and they cry. But like a hug, a significant gesture each day can go a long way for people. And to soften yourself first is like the first step in opening that door and inviting in that community, inviting in that connection, because it's really vital. It's really important for our society, for humans, for each individual. You can't just be in your lane, in your little bubble. It's just, yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah, we're all starving for that vulnerability, even if we don't realize it. And we're always, sort of scared about, oh God, like what are people going to think? And at least when I've done it, I'm sure you would say the same thing. This this judgment that we feel like we're going to be met with, it never happens. It's like, oh my God, thank you for being so honest and saying what everybody else was thinking. And there's just a magic to it. And I gotta believe, I mean, I just can't imagine what your young son Flint is gonna like. What a gift to be able to watch this documentary in a few years. You'll have to be like figure out when he's old enough to watch it, but like, what an amazing thing to be able to share that story with him in that way at some point.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
I think having it, as I hate to say, as like a photo memory of the incident,
Yeah.
it's like it'll be something special that like hopefully will, it encapsulates a really hard time in our life, and it's going to be emotional, and of course, but we've overcome so much. It's almost like we can celebrate that it captured that look, because like look at where we are now. Like, yeah, that feels like a celebration to me. And the goal is to release it in this year, 2026, primarily at film festival, is the first go, because we're trying to still figure out how to fund it. We've been basically self-funded the whole time, and we're looking for like sponsorships and that's like a whole crazy world. So we're trying to premiere it at a Sundance or South by Southwest or something like that and kick this journey off. So, but it's going to be fun. And the reason why we haven't watched it is because it's really emotional and nervous, and like, oh man, it's hard to, it happened to us. It's our life, but it's in a weird way. It's like the Jesse Vinton who's making it. It's like his story to tell. It's like he's the filmmaker that saw the process. It's too close. It's like almost too close to us to have like that
Yeah.
intimate connection with it.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I hope it, maybe get it into the Toronto International Film Festival because you come north of the border and you could get me into the screening.
Oh yeah, that one's on the list for sure.
And if it wasn't for that documentary, if it wasn't for the trailer that I saw, this conversation never would have happened. It feels like we were able to pick up a conversation, Sensi, that we started a couple of years ago. I'm just so honored that I got a chance to help you tell your story. Honestly, I've taken so many notes here. Your life in a lot of ways couldn't be more different than my life and probably the life of a lot of people listening, but there's just so much richness around this story, around resilience and reinvention and change and purpose. I mean, it's just there's something for everyone, and I'm so grateful for this conversation.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. We're super excited to help other people and share the bit we've learned in our short time on this planet.
Yeah, it's crazy. One thing that rings true that I think I see now in my life, like I taught kiteboarding for 10 years. That's how I got my jam into wind sports. And it's a job, you're in your 20s, you're like, cool, I'm a pro kiteboarder instructor. Like you're trying to be a pro kiteboarder. And you teach these people to do this crazy sport that you just mastered already. You're like, boring. I'm going to teach you to ride your board, like another beginner lesson. Here we go. Here's how to steer your kite. But what that gives them, this like insane joy, this like them experiencing that is so powerful, that I think I like love inspiring like excitement or stoke or like, and I think that our sport has allowed us to like continue that as we evolve as humans. My wife can take that lesson that we learned teaching kiteboarding and apply it to a new world of like confidence and like personal growth. I'm super excited still to get people on the water. I love inspiring people to try to achieve their best days and like really get after it. And kiteboarding is beautiful because you have to like, oh, it's not windy today, shoot. And so when you do get a windy day, you're like, yes, it's a windy day. It kind of fosters this sense of gratitude, because you have to seek out the great conditions, and you're like, that session was really great, and you work for it. Like you think we went to Maui, we only had like we had one great day, was it not the most glorious day? Because we didn't get what we wanted the whole time. So I think it's important to like think through the way that you can gain that every day. Like, how can you help someone else? How can you get that little joy of like teaching someone something? People do it with their kids, you do it with your clients. I think it's important to inspire. It's really a wonderful thing that came out of this whole accident, is this recognition that I like inspiring people. That's really fun. Yeah, maybe it's the new thing I get addicted to.
No kidding. Well, you're doing such an incredible job of it. And I know that people are going to love this conversation as much as I did. I'll put the links to both of your Instagram accounts in the show notes, sensigraves.com, right, Sensi?
Yep.
Anything else, anywhere else people can find you if they want to follow along?
Well, my wife, you can find her at Sensi Graves or Struck Kiteboarding. There's a way that you can onboard into the wonderful world of wind sports and personal growth. Me, I'm kind of just a social media guy right now. I'm not really employed still since the accident. I'm being a full-time dad. You can find me at the hatchery in Hood River almost every day. But I'm also really love connection, and so like reaching out, slide into my DMs as the new generation would say. I love fielding conversation and questions. I'm happy to always talk about anything. So people can just reach out to me directly through whether it's social media or that's probably the easiest way, because I'm not going to give out my email right now over the airwaves.
Right.
But yeah, that's probably the easiest way. And you can follow along with our documentary as that comes. We have like a page for that. It's called Windfall, because wind sports, I fell off a cliff and it was a windfall, like a win, kind of fun little title. And you can follow on that journey there. And as that ramps up, I'm sure there's going to be like a promotional, like we're going to have to, toot the horn. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of stuff that they can follow along with through those accounts and through those social media channels.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait. I'm excited to see the documentary, and I'm also really eager for you to post your reaction to the documentary. Like I can't imagine how emotional that'll be, but I guarantee you've created some new fans here today, and what a gift this was. Absolutely amazing. Thank you both so much.
Thank
you.
Thanks
We
for
really
having me.
appreciate it. What we said at the same time. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
The Growth Mixtape podcast with Bob Mathers is produced by Bespoke Projects. Music by Je-m'appelle Walter Cronkite. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow and rate us. When you do this, it helps to raise our podcast profile so that more people can find us. If you want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn using the link in the show notes.